Good afternoon, you guys. This is Miss Johnson, and I'm going to be showing you guys today how to complete the color wheel section of your color chart. So you will need either the handout from your book, your student pages, or you can print this from your OMS lesson 1.05. You'll need this page because this is what we're going to be filling in. You'll need some kind of paint palette, and here I just have a little plastic plate. You'll need your colors. You'll need crimson, cobalt blue, and medium yellow. Okay, and we're gonna hopefully, if we have time, we'll get to the tints and shades as well. No pencil. You do need some paper towel and a cup of water, and your paint brushes. Now I tried doing it with the paint brushes that were supplied to you, and honestly I just hate those because they have lots of little strands. Now you can take the strands and actually trim them a little. If you have a bunch of excess hairs that are sticking out, you can take and just barely trim. Now don't cut way down into the paintbrush. You just want to trim those little long hairs so that you don't have a bunch of little hairs sticking out. Okay. Now, if you don't have another paintbrush, you can definitely use these because they were supplied for you. I actually bought a little cheap pack from Walmart several years ago that I like to use just because they're cheap and they also work really well. Now you can see I've been doing a little painting, practicing, and you can see here on my paper towel I have some marks. That means that I didn't get all the color out of my brush. So you always want to make sure when you're rinsing your brush, before you start putting color down on paper, you want to make sure that you have a nice clean brush. And the way to do that is just check and see. You shouldn't have any color pigment left when you dab your paintbrush. Okay, so we're going to start by just putting a little bit of paint of the three primary colors. So we want a little bit of red. Oh, I forgot, I haven't opened this one. Let's see, I think I've opened the others, but okay, so make sure you've opened that. And that's what the lid's for. That little, there's a little pointy thing in the lid. That's perfect for that. Just a little bit. You don't need a whole lot because we don't have a lot to use, so we want to make sure that we use this sparingly. All right, put a little bit of yellow, and then put a little bit of blue. And notice that I'm making kind of a triad, I'm making kind of a triangle. That's because these are my primary colors, and they're going to go in a triangle on my paper. So we're just going to start up here with red, and I'm just going to fill that in using my paintbrush and go as neatly as possible. And you want to make sure that you don't go out of the lines any more than you have to. You don't want to work as quickly as I'm working just because I'm trying to make a video, and you guys can take your time and work a little bit more slowly and neatly. So make sure that you're covering all of the pie shape. Okay, you want to get every little bit as much as possible in there, just because we like craftsmanship. We like things to be neat and clean, and so do your best. Okay, so I have my red. Now I'm going to do a little bit of yellow, and again make sure that when you're drying that you don't have any color left, because otherwise you'll mix colors that you don't mean to mix. So yellow is going to go over here because remember we're making that little triad, that triangle on the color wheel. And you might notice that I got a little bit extra paint on my brush this time. That way I don't have to dip it quite as much. Okay, now we want to get any excess paint off or smooth it in as much as possible. Okay, so my yellow is done. Rinse. Always, always, always rinse between paint unless you're using the same paint color. So we have a nice clean, oops, I dripped on my paper. Now we're going to do blue. So we're just going to fill in that blue. Just make sure that you're as neat as you can be. And you want to make sure you kind of dab your brush. You don't want a lot of extra water in your brush, otherwise your paint gets really watery and thin, and you don't want that. You want it to have it because it doesn't cover as well. Okay. All right, so now we have our primary colors there, and you can see we have started to fill in our color wheel. So now what we have to do is we're going to mix our primary colors in order to make our secondary color. So one very important tip, never ever ever dip straight into the middle of your paint, okay? Always work from the edge. So we're going to take a little bit of paint from the edge, a little bit of the red, we're going to pull a little bit of the blue, and we're going to mix those together to get what color? Well, hopefully it's going to be a purple. And it's looking pretty good. Looks a little bit like a red purple, so I might, actually that's looking pretty good. All right. So we have a purple, so now we're going to, or violet is another name, so we're going to fill in the violet. Whoop, I just went out of the lines because I'm trying to hurry. All right, let's see. Okay, we got our violet. It's a hot mess, but that's okay because I am trying to hurry. Now we're going to mix our red and yellow to get what color? Orange. Orange, yes. And remember, we're going to pull from the edge, and there's hardly any left now. And we're going to pull from the edge, and we're going to mix those to make a pretty orange. And if it looks too red orange, pull a little bit more yellow in. If it looks too yellow, pull a little bit more red. But that looks like a really pretty color there, so I'm going to go with that one because that looks pretty good in orange. All right, so now we're going to fill in. Remember that you're filling in between the two colors that you just mixed. So we're going to fill in to get that orange. Okay. All right, so next we have green. So we're going to mix our blue and our yellow to get green. Now you can see over here, if you can see that, I have a little bit of red still in my paintbrush, so I'm going to rinse it one more time. Always make sure you're working with a clean brush, otherwise you'd get colors that you didn't mean to get. Okay, so now I'm going to pull from the other side. Since I have red over there, I'm going to pull from the other side to get my green. Okay, so I'm going to pull from the other side of my yellow. Never ever pull from the middle, because then you get a mess and you waste paint. All right, so that's a little bit too blue, so I'm going to pull a little bit more yellow in there, and maybe a little bit more. Yeah, that's still pretty dark. Yellow is a lot lighter than blue, so it's kind of difficult to make sure that you get the even amount of blue and yellow. And that still looks a little bit dark, so I'm going to pull a little bit more yellow in there. Okay, now we're getting closer. Just one more dab ought to do it. Okay, now we're going to paint our green. And that will be our secondary colors. And I apologize that I'm not being as neat as I should be, simply because I'm trying to hurry. Always remember you can move your paper around if you need to kind of help you to be able to pull a straight line. Okay, so we have primary and secondary, and now we're going to mix our tertiary or intermediate. They are, both terms mean the same thing. They're the colors that you get when you mix a primary with one of its secondaries. All right, so we have orange. Let's go ahead and do yellow orange. So I'm going to pull from the edge, and I want to make sure I don't get into that green, because if I get into that green, it's going to be ugly. And I want to mix at the edge of the orange, because on the other side I'm going to mix my red orange. So mix right there at the edge, and you can see now I have a yellow orange. So I'm going to paint in there and paint my yellow orange. Okay, and now I'm going to take my red, and I'm going to pull from the red, and I'm going to put a little bit in. Ooh, that was a big glob. Wow, it may take more of this than I intended, but since I'm finished, I can actually mix these together. Yeah, I'm going to need some more yellow, because it pulled a lot more than I meant for it to. Okay, now we want this to be our yellow, our red orange, so it doesn't need to be too red, and it doesn't need to be too yellow. And so I'm going to pull a little bit more because I don't want it to be too red. And it should be in between your red and your orange. And this looks like it might be a little bit too yellow now. You can always add a little bit more. Now, never ever ever add more red to the paper. Always add more red to your palette and mix it before you paint it, okay? So you always want to mix before you paint. Don't mix on the paper. Never mix on the paper. Okay. Now we're going to do yellow green. So you should be following along with me. Feel free to pause the video at any time if you need to. And again, always make sure that you have a clean brush. And I have a little bit of blue left in there somehow. I don't know how. That may have been from before. It must have been, because I didn't even use blue that time. Okay. So now we're going to do yellow green. So I have my green, and I'm going to pull my yellow and just mix it right there in the edge. And you don't want to get it too far over, because then remember, it discolors it. I mean, it changes the color really quickly. The darker the color, the more quickly you're going to change that color. Okay, so we're going to go with, looks like we still have a little bit. And I'm finished with the yellow, so I'm going to pull quite a bit in here because I want it to be pretty light. But don't want to get it in that orange, because that will make it a yucky brown. So we don't want to do that. All right, I'm going to fill that in so we have a nice yellow green. Okay. Okay, and now we want, and actually I don't have to wash my brush because I'm just doing blue green. So I'm going to pull some blue into the edge of that, and I want to create a blue green. All right, and that looks pretty good actually, pretty quickly. Maybe a touch more blue. And notice that I pulled from the yellow side, not from the red side. You don't ever want to mix red in there. You'll get a brown. Brown's not really what we're going for. We want a blue green. Okay. Okay. So we have blue green, and now we want to do a blue violet or blue purple. And notice that when I'm calling these names, you always use the primary color name first. Okay. So now I only have a little bit of blue left, so I have to be really careful. I don't want to get into that green. So I'm going to pull this from here, and I'm just going to mix just a hair right there at the edge. Let's see if that'll be enough without me having to get more. That looks pretty blue. Now if I just can get enough on my paintbrush. Nope, I got a little bit more red than I meant for it to. Just took my arm. I don't want to get that blue into that green. There we go. Got a little bit more color on there now. And if you do that, you can very easily just add a little bit more blue to your palette. I just don't want to do that because I want to conserve my blue. Okay, now I'm going to rinse. That one looks kind of dark. All right, now we're going to do our red violet. And so, oh, there's my red. I almost messed up, you guys. I almost put that right in there in the red orange, and I don't want to do that for sure. Now we want a red violet, and so that looks pretty good actually. Let's see if I can get enough paint to fill that in. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That's a pretty red violet. Let's see if I can get a little bit more paint on my brush. Okay, we are finished. And now you have your color wheel. you can see each of those colors. Yay! Hoo-hoo!